Hello, it's Kevin, and I'm coming to you from the shores of beautiful Lake of the Isles in the prestigious Kenwood neighborhood of Southwest Minneapolis. But we're not going to be here for long because today we are going on a tour of the Minneapolis chain of lakes. We're starting here at Lake of the Isles, and we're going to be heading past Bde Maka Ska, Lake Harriet, and following a Minnehaha Parkway all the way to Lake Nokomis. So I got the top down. It's about 90 degrees. We got a beautiful tour ahead of us. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. So along the drive today, I've got the camera mounted on the top of the windshield, so we're going to be able to have views in the directions, both left and right, forward, probably not backward, but I'll do my best to keep the view interesting as we check out some of the coolest neighborhoods and best parks in all of Minneapolis on this Chain of Lakes tour. And right now, we are heading along the west side of Lake of the Isles, located in the Kenwood neighborhood of Minneapolis. Kenwood is probably one of the most prestigious, if not the most prestigious, neighborhoods in the entire Twin Cities. Homes in this neighborhood were generally built in the 1890s through the 1910s and can be purchased for maybe as little as $1 million, but generally up in the $3 million range, and probably more if you want to be along the shores of Lake of the Isles. And as we come around this section, I will turn the camera to get a view of some of these beautiful homes. And it is a Friday afternoon, early evening in June. The temperature is about 91 degrees, and it's just looking like a beautiful weekend, and it's a great time to be driving around with the top down. My name is Kevin Huntington, your host. I am an independent real estate broker with my company Metro Home Connection Realty, and I've been getting into doing some more of these tours and videos just because my hope is, especially for people out of town or people from parts of the town who haven't had the opportunity to experience some of these places, I think it's nice to have literally a first-hand ground level view of what some of these neighborhoods and parks have to offer. So I've been putting these videos up, and if this is something that you like, I encourage you to hit the like button and subscribe if you'd like to see more tours like this. And I'll have some historical information along the way and do my best to share what I know about these neighborhoods and these parks, and especially if you're from out of town, give you a sense of what this Chain of Lakes park system is all about here in the city of Minneapolis. And looking out into Lake of the Isles, you will see the two islands that are not natural islands, but instead were dredged up. Lake of the Isles was essentially a large marshy swamp, and what they did is they dredged the lake and piled up what they found into the two islands. You're going to get a nice view, some kids jumping off into the channel that runs between Lake of the Isles and Cedar Lake. That's kind of fun. You're not supposed to do it, but they do it. And now we are turning away from Lake of the Isles onto Bean Parkway. We're going to be headed generally south, which is going to take us to Bde Maka Ska, which is the new name for the Minneapolis lake, formerly known as Lake Calhoun. And you'll notice along the entire drive today, all the way from where we're starting in Kenwood to the Nokomis neighborhood, we'll be running along a parkway with walking and biking trails from start to finish as we pass multiple lakes and the Minnehaha Creek. So if we weren't in the car, we could be on foot, we could be on a bike, we could be on a skateboard, making this very same trip. So around about the time they dredged Lake of the Isles and turned it into a real lake, shortly thereafter they dug a channel between what was known as Lake Calhoun at the time and Lake of the Isles, making it possible for the lakes to be connected and allowing boat traffic, which really isn't real boats, but not big boats or motorized boats, but canoes and kayaks to make it between the lakes. And these lakes are connected by channels like that all the way up to Cedar Lake and the Minnehaha Creek, which we'll be following all the way into South Minneapolis past Lake Nokomis, and that creek eventually will end up draining into the Mississippi River shortly after Lake Nokomis. The bridge we're passing under now is the Minneapolis Greenway, which is a bike path that runs across the south part of the city all the way to the Mississippi River, meeting up with St. Paul on the other side of the Mississippi. There's not a bridge, but other side of the Mississippi at that point is St. Paul. And then heading west all the way into Hopkins and St. Louis Park. So that's great bike access or pedestrian access through the southern part of the city. We now are crossing Lake Street, and the next body of water off to the left is Bde Maka Ska, which is the new name for the lake formerly known as Lake Calhoun, one of the most popular lakes here in South Minneapolis. It is right on the edge of the Uptown neighborhood, where there are a lot of condos and shopping and retail and restaurants and bars. And as we're heading along the west side of the lake, I will turn the camera to look out at the lake shore, and as you look behind across the lake, if you can see it, you will get a glimpse of some of the condos in Uptown, as well as a glimpse of the downtown Minneapolis skyline, which you may be familiar with from pictures and postcards of the city. That photograph is taken from this side of Lake Calhoun or the west side of Lake of the Isles, obviously with a long zoom lens that condenses the photo, making the skyline look much larger and much closer to the lake than it actually is. But even from the point we're at, we're probably only about 3 or 4 miles from the heart of downtown Minneapolis. And on the other side of the lake, you'll also see some sailboats that are tied up. Minneapolis has a lottery every year with the several lakes that we have, and people can bid for a spot to tie up their sailboat for the summer. And while there are no docks heading out to the sailboats, you either swim out or take a little dinghy, and then you can sail your sailboat around the lake and just leave it parked there all summer if you're lucky enough to win one of those spots. And as we head along the west side of Bde Maka Ska, there are several parks. This is one of them. You'll see we've got sand volleyball courts that are just getting into action here at the end of the day on Friday. And in addition to the beaches and the walking paths, you'll notice these parks also have a lot of just grassy green space with plenty of trees, so you don't feel like sitting in the sun. A lot of people will come out here and have a picnic in the shade or read a book or put up a hammock on a couple of these trees, and it's just a great feature that we have here. And there's that downtown skyline, very clear. If we had a big zoom lens, that we could pull that city up close and make it look huge. But there's that shot that you see of downtown Minneapolis. Only thing it's missing is the cherry and spoon from the Walker Art Center art garden. So during our tour, I'll also do my best to kind of call out the roads we're on, so you can kind of follow along if you're interested to know what part of the city that we're actually in. And right now we are on Bde Maka Ska Parkway, formerly Calhoun Parkway, and this is Thomas Beach to the left, which is just past the more recent beach that we saw. Multiple beaches on this lake, and actually most of the lakes. The neighborhood we'll be pulling into next near Lake Harriet is Linden Hills, also a very nice neighborhood of the city. Homes in Linden Hills were built generally around the 1920s and 1930s, and as long as the house isn't facing the lake shore, those homes run about $500,000 to $700,000 now, and it is early, or I guess it's mid 2021. We are now leaving Bde Maka Ska, crossing Richfield Road onto William Berry Parkway, which is going to connect us up with our next lake, Lake Harriet. And as you'll see, there's that bike path that will be following us throughout our entire tour. We're nearing Lake Harriet, and we're going to be pulling onto Lake Harriet Parkway right now. And hopefully we'll get a look at the Lake Harriet bandshell, which sits along the shore of Lake Harriet and is home to concerts throughout the summer, where people will come up, put down a picnic blanket or lawn chair, and enjoy free music in the park all summer long. And there is the Lake Harriet bandshell. No concerts right now. And here's the docking area for some of the sailboats on Lake Harriet. That's kind of a nice picturesque view of the lake with the sailboats docked alongside the shore. And I apologize if you're seeing some major vibrations. The quality of the road right here isn't great. Hopefully we'll be driving out of this soon. And as you see, the parkway along Lake Harriet is a one-way, which is the same for Lake of the Isles, but not for Nokomis or Bde Maka Ska. So the whole concept of the Minneapolis chain of lakes came about in the late 1800s and early 1900s, when the first president of the Minneapolis Park Board, Charles Loring, got together with landscape architect Horace Cleveland and went about negotiating the purchase of all the privately owned land, waterfront land, in Minneapolis. So all of these lakes and Minnehaha Creek, all the property surrounding these bodies of water is now all owned by the city. It's all public land with parkways and bike paths, and there are no properties, no personally owned homes along the lake. So the closest you get to lakefront in the city of Minneapolis, at least, is on the other side of these parkways. And those homes, as you can see, are also very nice homes. But as far as the waterfront goes, it's all public land for anybody from the city or anywhere to come and enjoy year-round. And we are now in the neighborhood of Linden Hills, still on Lake Harriet Parkway. We've got some roller coaster hills right here along the lake, which would be a lot more fun if this pavement wasn't so bumpy. But on a 90-degree day, I am enjoying the shade. Soon the road should smooth out, as we will be leaving Lake Harriet and continuing our journey south along Minnehaha Parkway, which should be coming up. And here it is. So here's another one of the beaches along Lake Harriet. And you can see maybe the band shell on the north side of the lake in the distance. We are now taking a right and heading south on Minnehaha Parkway, which is a large park unto itself running through the southern part of Minneapolis. And behind the trees and shrubs is Minnehaha Creek. And there are paths along the parkway and pedestrian bridges that jump back and forth over the creek all the way until it reaches Minnehaha Falls and enters the Mississippi River. So we're pulling up to 50th Street, which is a main east and west road. And as we look to the west, the neighborhood at 50th and France is about a mile and a half down that road, which is in Edina, a very popular Minneapolis suburb that nearly feels like it's just an extension, a neighborhood as an extension of South Minneapolis. And we are now continuing to head south, crossing 50th Street. And our parkway will be divided in two, and we will be sent to the south side of Minnehaha Creek. But as you can look out along this green space, as I mentioned, the area along Minnehaha Creek is part of the Minneapolis park system. So all the way through the city, it is just one big, huge park running along the creek with houses on the other side of the parkway. We are now pulling into generally Southwest Minneapolis. Homes in this neighborhood were built in the 1910s or 1920s. Being along the creek here would be much more expensive, but generally homes in this neighborhood in 2021 are selling in the $500,000 to $700,000 range. But it is a beautiful neighborhood especially along the parkway, 4 seasons out of the year, as you can imagine. And on the left-hand side, you'll see one of the pedestrian bridges across the creek. And because of these trees being so filled in, we're not really getting a view of Minnehaha Creek, but it is sitting down at the bottom of kind of the gully or trench on the other side of those trees. We've curved around and are now headed generally in an easterly direction and have just crossed over Lyndale Avenue, which is one of the main north and south streets in Minneapolis. And Lyndale is going to run all the way south to the Minnesota River and all the way north into downtown Minneapolis and beyond. Not too far south from where we're at is the first ring suburb of Richfield, and on the north side of the creek is the Minneapolis neighborhood of Tangletown, which we're not going to be able to cross over and look at, but while the majority of Minneapolis is on a very strict north, south, east, west grid system, Tangletown is a unique neighborhood in the city as it sits inside a curve of the creek with pretty large steep hill and a lot of really neat curving roads and some very pretty homes up in the Tangletown neighborhood. Maybe get a glimpse of the water down there along that railing, which is Minnehaha Creek. Will now be running up right alongside the creek. Just on the other side of the trees is Minnehaha Creek. And I believe the road we just passed under is Nicollet Avenue. And the bridge that you see ahead of us, we'll be passing under, is actually the bridge for Interstate 35W. So 35W comes right through South Minneapolis, but you'd barely know it as you drive under this bridge, except for the heavy traffic driving in rush hour just above us. If you're wondering, not sure what the word is for the creek, if you'd call it navigable, maybe navigable by kayak or canoe, and that is something that people do. The water doesn't really move fast enough to make a lot of progress on an inner tube, but people do put kayaks and canoes, and I have had the occasion. When we were inspired one time, we went out and bought a 3-person inflatable raft and some oars, put it in Edina. Minnehaha Creek actually runs all the way from Lake Minnetonka to the Mississippi River, and Edina is along the way, and put our little craft in the city of Edina, and over the next 2.5 hours floated and paddled our way all the way to Lake Nokomis and beyond to Minnehaha Park, where we got out, and that was actually a very fun trip. The interesting part about paddling the creek in Edina is that is not public land, so you're literally paddling through people's backyards, which is kind of funny. We're crossing Portland Avenue, another main north and south street of South Minneapolis. Just crossed over Minnehaha Creek, which is now on our south side. And we got some nice looking houses running along the parkway on the north side of the road. This is Chicago Avenue that we're crossing right now. And as we do so, we are pulling in to the Nokomis neighborhood of South Minneapolis. And really, when you look at the neighborhood on a map, Nokomis really covers a number of smaller, more specific neighborhoods in this area. But these neighborhoods all generally surround Lake Nokomis. And for the most part, these homes were built in the 1940s as the population of Minneapolis, with the soldiers coming back from World War II, all needed homes to live in, and South Minneapolis expanded, and a huge number of homes were put up in the southern part of the city at that time. So a lot of these homes were, again, built in the 40s, into the 50s, and here and there a home will be from the 60s, but they do have a lot of charm and character from that 1940s era when they were built. We are crossing Bloomington Avenue. The creek is still on our south side, and we're going to be coming up to Cedar Avenue and starting to get a look at our next lake on the tour, Lake Nokomis. And right here at the corner of Minnehaha Parkway, and Cedar Avenue, you see the Lunds & Byerly's grocery store, but we've also got a Caro Coffee, Grand Ole Creamery, and the Popcorn Shop, which is a great place to go for ice cream and popcorn. And it's an independently owned business that has been operating here since I lived in this neighborhood as a baby in the early 1970s at least. We're crossing Cedar Avenue, still headed east on Minnehaha Parkway. On the other side of the trees is Lake Nokomis, and we'll be coming up to, I think, 22nd Avenue, and we'll be able to jump right onto Lake Nokomis Parkway in just a moment. And we'll be leaving Minnehaha Parkway. Here's 22nd Avenue, and we're about to get a look at lovely Lake Nokomis. So on the other side of the trees, you'll see the main park and beach. We'll head in that direction. Very popular lake in the very southern edge of Minneapolis. From this point, we are probably about 10 minutes away from the Mall of America from where we are at, and any further south, we will be in the suburb of Richfield. So here in this park, we've got tons of softball fields and soccer fields, and over on the left, we've got the main park and beach for Lake Nokomis. And there's another beach, a smaller one on the other side of the lake. But at this particular beach park There's a pavilion with concessions and food, also bike rentals and boat rentals, kayaks and canoes mainly. And we'll loop up into the parking lot and see what there's to see from here. So we've got the lake on the other side of the trees, and that is where the sailboat parking is for Lake Nokomis. And there's the pavilion with the restrooms and the concessions. Here's a view of the beach, and you'll see a lot of Minnesotans out enjoying themselves on a day like today. Again, 90 degrees on a Friday afternoon. There's part of the beach, the bike and boat rental. And there's the beautiful lake. Looks like there's some type of graduation party over here. And we will now pull out of the parking lot and back to Lake Nokomis Parkway. Bridge over Minnehaha Creek, and there's an airplane coming in. Here's the view of the lake. And there's a fishing dock off this section of the lake. And far on the other side is the beach on the east side of Lake Nokomis. We're going to turn off Lake Nokomis Parkway. We're going to continue back onto Minnehaha Parkway and continue our journey to Minnehaha Park. So at this point, on the north side of the road is Lake Hiawatha and Lake Hiawatha Golf Course. Minnehaha Creek actually goes from a little corner of Lake Nokomis into Lake Harriet and exits on another side of Lake Harriet. So while Minnehaha Parkway continues east to west towards the river and meeting back up with the creek itself is right now running through the Hiawatha Golf Course in the direction of the falls, which is where we are headed ourselves. Crossing 28th Avenue South, and we are well into the heart of the Nokomis neighborhood. Homes in this neighborhood are selling generally in the range of $300,000 to $400,000, and as mentioned, these homes were mainly built in the 1940s, so they do have a lot of architectural character. A lot of stucco houses and Tudors, and some craftsmen back there, and some newer homes as well. But there are a lot of really neat looking houses for relatively low prices compared with the rest of the city. Now, one of the reasons for that is in the very neighborhood that we're at right now, we are getting awfully close to the Minneapolis International Airport, and this neighborhood does sometimes have significant airplane noise. But the Minneapolis Airports Commission several years ago put together a fund designed to compensate people affected by airport noise, and all of these homes received grants and compensation for new windows and or additional insulation in the roof. So these are very solid homes and very well insulated. And when you're inside, you really don't hear the airplanes. That plan worked. But occasionally when you're on the outside and an airplane goes by, you'll hear it as it is landing, as it feels just above the roof of your house. But that's part of the reason for the lower prices. But this is a very attractive neighborhood. I think I mentioned we're about 10 minutes from the Mall of America, obviously about 10 or 15 minutes literally to pulling into the parking ramps at the Minneapolis International Airport, and of course, as you're seeing, surrounded by parks. And the bridge we're going to be going over in a moment here is over Hiawatha, and along Hiawatha is the Hiawatha Light Rail line that goes from downtown Minneapolis. It's the I believe it's a green line, goes from downtown Minneapolis all the way to the airport and ending at the Mall of America. From Minneapolis, you can get on the blue line and head into St. Paul, and they're working on another line that's going to be going into the western suburbs. So we just crossed over Hiawatha, which is a pretty main road, Highway 55, and we are coming up to the Longfellow Gardens in Minnehaha Falls Park. And we will go this way along the park. We'll have one more bridge over the creek right here. And if you stick with me, we'll head down and take a look at the creek itself. And perhaps you can hear the sound of the falls already. Here's a view of the creek as it's coming towards the falls. Here's a view of the creek top down. And we can run right around the corner and actually get a look at the face of the falls and a view of the park as well. This park has been here for a very long time. In fact, my understanding is that some of the postcards of Minnehaha Falls caused a lot of interest in the city, I believe, in the late 1800s. And people from all over the country, all over the Midwest, would come to Minneapolis to see these beautiful falls. These falls also inspired the poem Song of Hiawatha by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And further up the creek at the top, there's actually a statue, I guess dedicated or inspired by that poem by Longfellow. And here we're walking down the stairs where we'll get a look at the face of the falls. We'll go a little further down and get a better look at this thing. Here we go. Here we go. Got this little space all to ourselves, and there is Minnehaha Falls. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this tour of the Minneapolis chain of lakes, surprisingly ending at Minnehaha Falls themselves. I'm going to put a couple other videos links up on the screen. If you like this video, I encourage you to watch one of the others. They might be good as well. Otherwise, thanks for joining me and have a great day. Bye.